Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Face It with Dr. G. I'm Dr. G, and I have the extreme pleasure and honor of having Kaeli Lindholm on the podcast today. We are so excited to have her to hear all about how she grew her own company, how she got into the medical aesthetic space, and giving you tips and pearls about what she hears from her clients, what she sees in the aesthetic space. How do you start a business, grow a business, scale a business? It's going to be so great. So, welcome.
Thanks, Dr. G. I'm excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Yeah, sure. About me, first and foremost, I'm a mom of two teenage boys. So that'll tell you a lot about me right there. I'm a Southern California native, a former collegiate soccer player, so an athlete at heart and mind, and an entrepreneurial spirit. And I am the founder of KLC Consulting, and our flagship program is the Pop Leadership Academy. And we are on a mission to help 1,000 inspiring and intentional women cross the next $1 million milestone in their business this year. And I guess that's why I'm here with you today.
It's so good. You also
Yeah.
have a podcast. Tell everyone about that too.
Yeah. My podcast is called the Fierce Factor podcast. I started it almost 5 years ago. And actually, that was a passion project. I think that came out of frustrations I felt in the sense of I had this feeling inside of me where uh, I felt misunderstood in a way. And I felt like I had a message I couldn't really get out into the world. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to start my own podcast and just, I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to make it sort of my space to go and talk. And before you know it, people are like, me too. I think that too. Oh, I totally need this, and little by little over the course of time, it's grown into a really special place that I enjoy spending time every week. So, yeah.
And so, did you start with yourself and then transition into having guests like your clients and other individuals, or?
Yeah, as far as the podcast strategy, that was something a mentor of mine recommended to me early on. I'm so grateful for, which was if you have the message, then you be the vessel for that. And so I do primarily solo episodes. Much of the content that I create to deliver on the podcast is based on real life, real time, in the moment coaching with clients. And obviously, certainly my sort of strategic insights and my personal perspective building a business in whatever time we're in, which is always an up or down or sideways, a loop de loop. And so I kind of get it, right? And it's like, hey, here's what I'm thinking and feeling, and maybe you are too, and here's how I'm navigating this right now. So yeah, and then I'll bring clients on and inspiring people who I think have a really valuable message to share, but maybe don't have their own platform or don't get to be heard as much. And I think that there's so much power in that, and the women who just like have their head down, building, grinding their business, and they're just so focused doing that they're sometimes the most special people to learn from.
That is, I want to expand on that right away,
Yeah.
because in our field, it's very unusual, and unusual in the sense that the people that we hear from all the time, these KOLs, are also assumed to have really great businesses. And when you start learning more about their intentions, their business, what they're doing, building their own personal brand on stage, they're actually away from their companies.
Yeah.
They're probably not really building a good business, and the people that are, you don't hear from. So I love that. Tell me more about that, and did these people that have these companies that are scaling, they reached out to you for help, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just kind of peeling back high level to the bigger sort of question about KOLs and about women building businesses. If you think about where we are in our industry, right, which is sort of this like baby, rapidly growing space. And I've been here for, I think, almost 16 years. I started in skincare sales and then device sales and worked my way up the corporate ladder into management before I started my company. And I was on that side. I was on the corporate side. I was industry. And I was paying people to stand on stage and talk about our products. And I remember planting, physicians into the audience to just be like, act like they didn't they weren't getting paid, but they were. And, the KOL discounts on devices and all the things. And, it's not to say that if you're a corporation and you're trying to build and run a company, that's not necessarily a great strategy for you. It certainly was, and it worked for me. But what became frustrating for me is as I started to evolve, eventually got to the point where I did start my own business. I went and worked in partnership as a managing director with a plastic surgeon, and I built a practice with him. And I was sort of on the other side of the table, and these reps would come in and talk to me, and I'm like, I already know your game. It's okay. They hated having lunch with me. Let me tell you. And then when I launched and scaled my company, I was that person that these companies would call and say, "Oh, we'll throw you into the deal," or it was almost like my value was being minimized, and I started standing on stages and being told, oh, "Okay, well, we like that, but it needs to be a top 10 list," or actually, don't talk about mindset shifts entrepreneurs need to make. No one likes that. They want to how do you specifically what's the tactic of the best compensation plan, and I'm like, actually, there isn't one best anything. And the experiences that I was having as an entrepreneur building my company, there was somebody that was, I don't even know, it was industry, like the power at B, who were running these organizations or these conferences, and was like, "We're going to tell you what to say." And then eventually got to the point where they were asking me to pay them to stand up on stage and talk. And I was like, wait, I'm a paid speaker. That's not going to work for me. I just think as somebody who would go to these conferences and listen, you're so craving, you're a sponge for knowledge. You're a sponge for like, who do I listen to? Where do I go? And when you see somebody speak about something on stage, you just naively kind of fall into, oh, that must be what made them successful. And most of them it's a pay to play game, and it's sort of, in my opinion, what has homogenized our industry in many ways. And so it's really frustrating for me on this side. And to answer the second part of your question, why women come to work with me, I think it's because they feel those same frustrations, and they have a resource in somebody that they know they can trust to help them build the business and a life of success that they desire, not what some industry or somebody says, this is how your practice should look. I think that innovation actually happens with blinders on. It's by creating new categories. It's by thinking about things that don't actually exist, So
Which is the best part, and it's so exciting. And I think, yeah, you have to have a brain that's wired a certain way to think unreasonably and to be a visionary and have these ideas and questions, and then have your team look at you and say, why would you do that? And I'm like,
yeah.
because it sounds good.
Yeah, but to do that, it's like we can talk about that, but the reality is, I think most new businesses, existing businesses, like it doesn't matter, even industry specific, like we fall into this comparison trap because we see what other people are doing and we think, oh, that made them successful. I want to do it, and we have even in the cases of some of the women I work with who have 8 and 9 figure models and multiple locations, or even one really successful location and 30 employees, and then they're have an academy and they're training up someone will go and shadow them and then implement every single tactic, like, oh, I'm going to change my EMR, I'm going to hire an MA for every provider, I'm going to and their business is not built to sustain that. They're going into shadow and model all of the step by step, but what they really need to be asking is, like, how did that person think that made them successful, that allowed them to create this ecosystem that they have built? And so I think there's just not enough support around, like, you can do it your own way, follow women and be inspired by women who did it their way, and then build your own,
Yeah, and you have to give them credit, right? They're go-getters. They want to do it the exact same
Totally.
way. This model works, fine. But that model works only so long and for so much. And I would always say at the very beginning of GFace MD, everyone was like, geez, these people are copying you, and these people are copying you, and these people. And I'm like, first of all, as everyone says, it's a compliment. Great. I'm a
Yeah.
trendsetter. But also, by the time they copy me, I'm already on to 3, 4, 5, 6 things beyond them. So I don't, you don't want to get stuck in the weeds, and you always have to innovate and always think of the next step.
Yeah. Well, and I think that no one skips a line, because, like, how all the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into building what you've created, no one gets to not do that, right? You can learn some best practices, but ultimately you have to be willing. I think of entrepreneurship as like the journey of like a million identity shifts, because you have to like, there's death of like who you used to be to, go through the, I don't know, it's just the torture of doom of like, you have to go through the hard to get the good. And the people that try to skip and not, you end up unfortunately stagnant.
Right. I just posted something on my Instagram, and it was something about every new phase requires a different you, and every new phase
Yeah.
of growth requires a different you. Did you post that? I don't know
Oh,
if I
I don't
saw
know,
that from you.
probably. I don't know.
It was so good because, people say, oh, people never change and all this nonsense. I am a completely different person, personally and professionally, than I was when I opened GFace MD. And why would you want to skip steps? For me, it's all about the journey. The end, I don't care about the end. I mean, I do. I want the company to grow and build. I want to create incredible people and all of that. Uh, but you have to enjoy the journey and learning along the way. And I was having a conversation last night with a friend who was said something along the lines of, I just can't believe how wonderful of a businesswoman you are, having gone to medical school. And I was like, well, I genuinely love it, and I'm constantly listening to business books. Some people just aren't wired that way. So
Yeah, well, I think it's like this, and it's interesting to hear this from your perspective as what you're, triple, quadruple board certified MD, but
it doesn't
here's the
matter anymore.
thing. No, no, I know. And you're funny because you're like, that's literally nothing to do with building a great business. But
Yeah.
what happens when, this industry is an industry full of high performing perfectionists, like just to even get like to PA school, right? Just to be accepted into some of these specialties, you have to have perfect grades. You have to be the best there is. Like, you are competitive, you are driven, and you hold yourself to such a high standard. But when you step into business, there's a lot of logic, but there's actually a lot more art to it, and it's a lot more creativity. And so I always have to, it's balancing that sort of analytical brain with, now this is your playground here, and you have to be okay with bumpers. Like, you have to fail and try things and take risks. And you also will be stepping into an arena where you're not going to be perfect, and you're probably actually going to be really bad and do things wrong first. And I think that kills a lot of people's egos, and then they boomerang back into, I don't know that, and become this like, I'll just stick here and learn more clinical skills, and never really embrace what you have, which is like really diving head into becoming loving the business, let's say, right? Because I don't think there's like a great or not great. Everyone who like is a great business leader, if you allow yourself to enjoy that space and allow yourself to go through the struggle of trying something and maybe not being great at it, and then
Yeah.
learning from it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so funny you say that, because sometimes I think, do I love the business or do I love the people?
Yeah.
And the people are the company, and I'm here because of them. And and all these memories pop up on your phone, and I look back to my team even 2 years ago, and I loved them also, and some of them didn't do great things to me, and I still just poured everything into my team at every step of the journey, because they want to be here for a reason. And if they didn't want to be here, then I was like, just go on then. I want people who want to be here, that love it, that eat, breathe, sleep GFace MD. But it truly is the people that make up the company. And that's why I love it. I don't love all the decisions. I mean, I use the word decision making fatigue all the time. I'm just like, I can't make another decision today. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
But it's getting less and less as you delegate more and more to
Yeah.
bigger decisions less frequently, and the day to day just runs itself. And it's, how do you get there? And I know that's what you help so many with.
Yeah. And it's that, again, like, I think we're used to, like, think about what made you successful in the beginning. You were very much in control of your destiny, in the sense of, okay, I know if I study, I get this grade, here's where I go next. Or I know if I like put this effort in here, this will happen, right? And you get to this inflection point when you're building a business where that way it doesn't work. You can't build it by like grinding more. There's not enough hours in the day, and you need to have other people. But then you have to learn a new skill, which is letting go of control and allowing people to, essentially creating a place where they can safely fail, and maybe they're not going to do it just like you, right? And I think when early on, when you're building your team, and I wonder if like you had this experience too, you're just so hungry to have people that like want to be a part of it and to help you. You're like, I'm exhausted, like someone help me. And you kind of just like whoever will take it, go
Yeah,
come
like
and just
friends, family, and patients that want part-time work. It's like,
totally. You're like, yes, and on the cheap and all the things, and then
yep,
you're like micromanaging them, and then you create more work for yourself, and you get to this point where you ultimately that model burns out. It doesn't work, and then you have this PTSD over people, and it's such a mind game. You have to get through all of that. You have to try it, until you get to the point where you're saying like, hey, you eat, sleep, breathe this. That's it. Like that's where I try to take women, help them get to that level of insourcing that kind of confidence and wisdom, like around, you have to set boundaries around your standards and what your expectations are, and not allow somebody to collapse that. And that may mean you're very lonely for a while, and that may mean a lot more no's than yeses. And I think that part is really hard because we're social creatures, and entrepreneurship is very lonely.
it's very lonely.
Yeah.
I love what you said, because I think a lot of people are thinking, well, how do you find good people? And that is such a complicated question. The answer is very complicated. And I think there's two ways to find really good people. It's hiring people better than you, but if you don't have the resources, those have experience that, have been working in the field for a long time, they're expensive. So maybe you can't afford people like that. And finding people that are driven, that I just have always had a gut about people that they're driven, they get things done yesterday, they have ideas, they're visionaries, but it's a struggle, and you learn the most from the people that aren't with your company anymore, that you've actually had to get rid of, what you did wrong, what you're missing, and getting rid of weak links, or just facilitating their removal if it's not the right fit, is the best thing you can do. But it's so much better to be alone and to be exhausted and all of that than to have bad help that's pulling you down.
Yeah.
So, really
Well, I think what's important about what you just said is if you heard yourself, like I think most people say good people, where are all the good people? Where do I find them? Is the question they're asking. And it's like, well, did you go to Indeed or LinkedIn or use a recruiter? And what they haven't done is define good for them, right? And so you're saying, I need someone that's driven and passionate and energetic and all of these things. You can call that out, and so you know what you're looking for in a candidate. And I think most more novice business builders who haven't been through the exit process with people to be able to really clearly define all of that. They focus so much on the skills, right? They're like, okay, they need this qualification and this and that, and be able to do this and that, and so the certification. Totally. And so then what you end up with is people that, sure, they have the skill, but there's a mismatch in value alignment, or they don't support you in the way that you need, and they're not good people. They have a good resume, but they're not your good people. And so the key has to be doing your due diligence to define what that means for you, which is going to be totally unique.
And go with your gut. I'll give an interesting example of someone who was with my company for about 4 years. And I saw this trend, as the company changed, some people don't adapt to the changes. And that's okay. It's totally fine. GFace MD 1.0 is not the same as 8.0. And I thought it was fascinating that this individual would keep in touch with everyone that was no longer with GFace MD. Patients that really didn't align with GFace MD, and create their own little community of people that didn't support us. And it was always deep down in my gut and in my mind, and I'm like, why? That person is no longer here, and it's a huge weight lifted off of our shoulders. But those little tiny behaviors that you're like, yeah, it's not a big deal right now, and oh, it's not a big deal right now, you need to keep those in your mind. Yeah, maybe you don't take action right away, but as a leader and an owner, that's going to not only affect you personally and professionally, but it's going to affect your culture. And the longer you let it simmer, it just gets worse and worse. So,
yeah. Do you find that you have become more in touch with like your intuition and your ability to make those gut calls as you've evolved in your business?
100%. And I don't always act on it right away. So I've been much better about delayed reactions to things, but once I process what happens, I'm very quick to take action.
Mm-hmm.
And 99% of the time I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm wrong about a lot of things, okay, but I'm not saying I'm right all the time, and I love to be wrong. But
Yeah.
with things, even just first impressions, and if it's about a decision of do we hire this person or do we not, and I have any inkling that there's something off, I'm just like, no, there's no reason to do that if I have any weird feeling. The other thing I do though is I really give it to my team. I mean, this isn't just my decision. Now, if I do need to kind of go above everyone, which is very rare now, um, I will. But I always ask them, what do they think? And when people come in to interview, I'll have them sit down with the team and say, how is it to work with her? What is it really like behind the scenes? And I don't ask them
Yeah.
what they said. I mean, I want them to know the day to day, what it's
Yeah.
like here.
Yeah.
It's not all about Instagram, even though we're very transparent on Instagram. And then what I love is when we do go to conferences and things like that, people will come up to my team and say, how is it to work for her? And da 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 da. And I think a lot of times you get an answer that's like, ugh, so hard to work with, and I can't stand her, and this and that. And I think still everyone really loves working here, and that's what I love. That's what makes me the happiest. So,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah. Um, I want to go back to what you said at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you felt misunderstood,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to hear that story because I resonate with that very much.
Mm-hmm.
If you're
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I'm an open book. Absolutely. Yeah. I think some of it goes back to that feeling of when you know something and you feel like something isn't right or should be done a different way or could be done better, and no one really wants to hear that, and so I think that the most part for me was really about how to build a business. And I have a business degree. I've you know I know enough about business. I'm obviously not an expert, but our grandmothers as women, like, nobody, I mean, our grandmas didn't even work, let alone run multi-million dollar empires. And the dynamic, like what we are experiencing as female entrepreneurs, the dynamic has shifted so much and is continuing to shift in terms of like domestic roles, and yet who we are as women hasn't changed. And so here I was, super ambitious, climbing the corporate ladder, eventually starting my own company, but my like desire and passion to be a great mom and to have, I don't know, the domestic life, like to have other things in my life and friendships and girl times and all of that did not go away. And I'm starting to watch women I work with, like just one after one, just crash and burn, crash and burn, crash and burn. And I'm like, there has to be something out. There's a better way to teach business growth, and there's a better way for women. That I think we can have it all. I think that the expectation that we have to be everything to all people is wrong. And so, a lot of my frustration was just that I'm watching women more of in our industry that are like, taking copious notes from people on stage. And I tell this sort of story about like this woman who called me after I was sitting at a conference and I watched her being interviewed by someone talking about this, her $8 million business, and people are just pounding notes. And then she calls me the next week and is like, I'm literally going to die. Like, I hate my life. Like, my team is falling apart. I'm actually not taking much home, and I thought, well, how is that okay for us to glamorize and to put people on pedestals and on these stages to teach other people about how to build great businesses when they don't really, they're not. And it was less about like on anybody's fault. It was more about why can't we be more transparent about actually what it is and what it's like, and support each other through, yeah, this sucks. We're going to fail here. I did fail. I'm doing this wrong. How do I, and why couldn't she stand on stage and be able to say that and to normalize the fact that we're all actual human beings and we're all trying to figure out and go on this journey. And so for me, that was where I'm like, there has to be somebody that leads this charge and supports and is the voice of and an example for women of what is possible, authentically possible, and that what is the way we need to build. And that was when I created the first business model, which really shifted and appended what I learned about building a business in college, and it was about what I learned how to navigate the real complexities of entrepreneurship, as a mom and wife and friend, sister, daughter, all of the things, and to lean into like what you were talking about, Gretchen, which was my instincts and my intuition and my gut and like some of the magical gifts that we have as women to, I believe, be the most badass business owners in existence.
Yeah.
And so it's a holistic approach. And I've had a lot of resistance, like particularly there's a lot of coattails I didn't ride to get, to build my business. And I had to not jump on, the what is the instant gratification or the fast path. It's been slow and steady growth, but it's been in integrity of what I value and I believe other people value as well.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing. Truly. It gave me chills when you were talking about like women in business ownership and all that, because it really is just, we are so powerful as women. We have so many unique characteristics that men can't offer. And yes, there's still this whole discrepancy, and whatever, we are very powerful. We have so much to say. That brings me a little bit more to authenticity. That's why I paused. But I think what you do is so wonderful, and how you bring all these women together at the conference to really hear each other's stories, and really be authentic and genuine. Because I'll tell you something, it took me a while, but I was on a panel. I've stopped speaking at conferences because I went through that black hole and came out partially alive. But I was on a panel, and it was about business. I think it was All-Star Inspectors or something. And everyone it's rinse and repeat. They feel like this is what they need to say. This is how they train people, blah, blah, blah. I waited to speak, and I disagreed with everything they said and every single one of them on the panel. And people were just like, what? And they were all listening. I had all these people come up to me afterwards and like, thank you for being so real, so honest, so genuine. I'm like, guys, this is not how it goes, at least not in my life. So I'm going to tell you my story. And by the way, none of them had good company. So it's just, people don't want to waste their time. They're spending money to be at a conference to learn new things. And I put myself out there and I was like, here we go.
Well, I know, but
what's
I think important about that is the reason everybody feels frustrated. I hear this a lot, like, well, anybody can pop up on Instagram and say they're a master injector, and oh, they're copying my marketing, and oh, so and so, and now, and at the end of the day, like, if you want to stand out and differentiate yourself, you have to be okay with being misunderstood. And you have to be the one who's willing to say the things that everybody else is thinking, but no one is saying.
Yeah.
And that is like a very contradictory, like, feeling as women, right? We're supposed to fit in, we're supposed to get along, kumbaya, friendship, girl power, whatever. And the truth is, it not many women are willing to have the ovaries to do that. And that, when you do, you're going to be the one who, no one's going to copy that.
Yeah. I think it's the Taurus in me. I guess it must be the Taurus in me. I don't know what it is, but something along those lines. Yeah. I think sharing your story, and I just recently started writing a book, and that's also been just so overwhelmingly eye-opening with everything, how I've just been guided to just brain dump. Don't think about what you're writing and just write it all down. And it's fascinating, and I hope it helps a lot of people whenever it's done. But
congratulations. That's exciting. That's a lot.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about authenticity. So, being honest with everybody and open and transparent about your struggles and everything business-wise is one thing. How do you truly become authentic? What does that mean?
So here's what authentic is already there. It's who you are, right? And I remember struggling with this when I was building my brand, and people would always say, just be you. And I'm like,
who am I though? I don't know.
Right. Well, that's the point, is that The challenge is back to the comparison trap, right? And we don't spend enough time insourcing and listening to our own wisdom. We're so busy going outside. What are they doing? Oh, check them out. What's that book, that podcast? And I don't know if you've been here, Gretchen, where you're just like, I have fatigue. Like I get to these points, like probably twice a year where I'm like, I can't listen to anything else. Like I literally need to turn my phone off and I need silence. And that has been, and with most of the high growth women that I work with who've achieved very significant levels of success, they are very good at shutting out noise and getting real quiet and spending time with themselves and listening to themselves for answers. And I think that you only find what drives you, what's important to you, what your values are, with who you want to be, with the creative thoughts of how you can be, just really blossom by being quiet and spending time alone, and with your journal and with some soft music, like doing things, however, to create and stimulate creative energy instead of just like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and moving so quickly that you don't allow yourself to go inside and get that. And I think that's why if you do, you're like, oh, this is authentically how I feel, not like natural results, right? It's like, okay, I get that, right? You're frustrated that maybe you do it this way but someone else doesn't, but like, what is your disruptive philosophy? And that's something is like an anchor milestone that I teach, and is like creating your own proprietary aesthetic method. Like, what do you do that is unique to you? Because we take inspiration from different places, but like ultimately you do it your way.
Yeah.
And probably, I know you and I both, and most people started their business because they didn't like the way it was done where they were before, and they saw an opportunity to do it differently, and then they forget who that person was that had the guts to go and do it their way, because they start to get buried in the AM spa booths, or whatever. And it's like, no, just go back to like you just need you and your brain, and you will figure it out, right? Build the right team, step by step, and you will be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that phrase, disruptive philosophy. I'm stealing that one. I love it.
Yeah.
But I think it's very interesting. I am one who didn't know how to be alone and didn't know. I mean, I knew who I was, but it was all based on awards and accolades and degrees and all of that. And being a dermatopathologist, I'm truly the only one in the space that's pathology trained in aesthetics. I think worldwide. I don't even know, but there's people in pathology don't typically transition to aesthetics. Dermatopathology, very rare, and there were a couple that tried to follow me afterwards, and they were like, yeah, this isn't for me. But because I was so weird, I tried to hide it from everyone.
Huh.
And hiding it from everyone was my biggest mistake. But I finally came to, and I realized, wow, I have a lot of very unique ways of thinking and ways of explaining, and I understand things totally differently. And then it was like, wow, okay, this is wonderful. But I never knew how to sit still. And at the beginning of G-Face, it was 3 a.m. nights every single night. I couldn't do it fast enough. It was the time it takes for me to tell you to do this, I could have already done it. I mean, that was how I thought. It's just like unreal. But I look back and I say, okay, I had to learn how to do it all. So, one day maybe if I am alone and everyone just leaves me, I do know how to do it, which is great. But what that caused was a massive burnout after my third baby. And this was in 2021. And I had such severe burnout that I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't do anything. And my director of ops, she didn't have that title yet, but she was remote. She was still in college, and she's just beyond incredible. Was doing payroll from Barcelona, studying abroad. We were implementing this whole new system for payroll called Frieling, which is like onboarding and all this. My burnout required me to delegate. So it's not even that I said, okay, I need to delegate. I physically was impaired. So I just think that's fascinating how that had to happen to me. And it's okay, I guess, but I didn't consciously say, okay, Gretchen, now you have to delegate.
Yeah. Because like taking the idea of for you, like just to touch on that being misunderstood, and I imagine you're misunderstood to this day very often, and you just have to be okay with that, right? Yeah. And I think that was such a really powerful message that you said, which was like, I hit it. I was embarrassed by it. And I find so often like it is that thing that you feel really, that's because it's the different thing. It's something that you're trying to kind of like shelter from people, or that you think makes you weird, is usually what your magic or your strength is, right? That's your story. And so I think that like in many cases that's the place to go. Like what's the one thing, you're probably most afraid people would know about you, is
Yeah.
that is like, yeah, what your absolute strength is. But yeah, to the burnout, I mean, I think that like it goes back to building success the way that you did, and how it's such the cliche, the saying of like, what got you here won't get you there. And there is an inflection point where you then become the bottleneck to your business, because then people are waiting on you for approvals, or they're waiting for you on the green light to do something, or for direction, or, and so they never have that space to actually think like an entrepreneur, to be autonomous and self-led, and like deliver results on their own, because they're just waiting for the next thing to do. And so that requires, I'm sure, but when you're burned out and in bed, like you have to, that's your shedding of the skin. Like it is okay, as something has to change. And I think that some of us recognize those, signs when it's like, okay, my instincts are telling me this is not right, but usually it's our body. Our body starts to break down,
Yeah. And
and
you
it's
just
like,
stop thinking. I mean, I just couldn't think. I couldn't make any decision. And I think that, you know, for me and for many entrepreneurs, we still kept going in some small way. I was still able to put one foot in front of the other and get it done, right? I mean, I was so determined. I am so determined. It won't fail.
yeah,
But the pace at which it was happening then was really burnout, but I still kept going and kept going and kept going. And that's
yeah.
the grit that we have that others don't, not that they don't have it, but people don't see that side of it. They don't see the toll it takes, and the grit it really takes. So,
No, I talk about, this was like like this infamous like Zoom call I had in one of our programs, and I was like, well, I just had my cry day yesterday, and people are looking at me like, what? I was like, if you know, you know. It's like, it's okay. It's like the monthly cry, and so it's like, it's okay. That's just part of it. And it's like you will wake up and want to throw it all away. Like you will have that day, but you have to prepare. And that's where I think like coaching helps too, is I'm like on the edge right here, and it's like, I know, but remember what's on the other side of it. And I also think like as women, I think it's like built into our DNA, but like when our back is against the wall and we have no options, we become really resourceful, and we become really creative. And so sometimes it does take that, like, okay, now what am I going to do? There's no way out, to actually think really differently about what we do have available to us, to take accountability for where we are.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so I have a question.
Yeah.
What happens when you don't have your monthly cry? Do you get worried?
Oh, no, it's just coming. Also,
Good.
I will say this, like I think like the one of the biggest, like the most useful things to learn as an entrepreneur is emotional self-regulation. And I think when you learn how to not be in the lows for so long, and over time, like, okay, this happened and it maybe would have been catastrophic a long time ago, or the old version of me would have just not known what to do. Like, it feels like really, really bad. But that it's like moving through it very quickly. And so I think there's that. Like, I actually do enjoy a bad day. It's a weird thing, but like when I have a really, really bad day, I'm like, okay, good. I survived.
I
Like
made
we
it through
survived
it.
100 of the days. Yeah, 100% of the days that, we thought we wouldn't. And then, it's like, okay, tomorrow's going to be a better day because I'm going to, recover and survive. And it goes back to the mental game. If you learn how to, and this is something I look for when I hire people, is how emotionally, I think, just like capable are they to self-regulate. Can they manage difficult times? Like, how are they going to move through adversity? Because there are going to be bad days. Like, we are all going to have them. So yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if I've ever skipped a monthly cry day, but I would be okay if it didn't come.
You double up the next month.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
there's two different ways to think about it. There's the way to think about it where you're like, okay, something will go wrong today. I'm prepared for it. And if it doesn't, I'll be really excited. But just to like set yourself up for the worst, I don't typically think that way because I'm an optimist and I'm like, whatever happens is going to be wonderful. And if something bad happens, we're going to learn something and we're going to move on.
Right.
But if you want to make it so that you can make anything digestible, it's okay. Something will happen bad today. What is it going to be? I don't know.
Yeah, and also where can I find the good in that, right? And I think I love what you said about the lesson because I always ask myself like, okay, what am I going to learn from this? And so I think it's such a gift to be able to think about that, I think it's the cliche of like, oh, you have to fail and fail and fail. And failure is so insidious and it's so hidden and it's so sometimes just inside of you. And like the thoughts that you have about your own worthiness or your capability or your frustration of how you handled a situation. And there's so much work you're doing that no one sees to become a better leader, to become better in all of the different areas of your life that, if you don't have that programmed in your mind that like there is something I can take out of it and I have some control over how I respond to this, then I don't know how you could own a business. I really just don't.
Totally.
Like,
And
yeah.
as long as you know you're making the right decision, regardless of what happens, you can't control other people and how they react, what they say about you. I mean, I also posted something about the quieter you are, the more you hear. And you just, as long as you're doing things you think are ethical, you treat people the right way, even if it's hard to deliver information that may not be what they want to hear, you're sticking by your business and your people, you're supporting all of the systems you put into place, and you're treating people with respect, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Um, but the reactions that you get can be hard, and
Yeah.
also lowering your expectations of others, because just because I treat someone a certain way and have brought them into my culture and my company doesn't mean that if they ever were to leave or when they do leave, they're going to treat me the same way. They'll quit on the phone, they'll do this, they'll do that, they'll try to steal from me, they'll do all these things. And you just not lower your expectations, but just say, okay, well, if that made them happy, great.
Yeah, well, I think it's easy for us to look at somebody else and say, I don't understand why they didn't see it my way or why they wouldn't do that. And they're not you, right? And so no one is going to be you. And I think that's an important lesson too, as like a founder building something new and like the work that you do. Like you can't just expect people to know what your expectations are. And you're going to hold people to those, whether you communicate them or not. And so it's better for you to just be honest with yourself about, like, hey, the way you chomp your gum when you talk to me drives me nuts. And like, I just need you to not do that. Right. Like, it could be as simple as that, but it's like, just say it, get it out there. Because you'll drive yourself crazy, like just the stuff in your mind trying to wonder why somebody didn't do it the way you did it, and just tell them, like, just
Yeah.
come out with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And also having insight into your own behaviors. As a leader, I want others to know that I understand how I'm coming across in a certain moment. So if I'm feeling particularly manic one day, or if I'm feeling particularly tired, I'll just be like, you have to give me a minute today, I'm struggling. Or, guys, just take a deep breath with me today, I'm manic. It's going to come out really fast, and we'll regroup. Just so they know that you're aware of your behaviors. I think
Yeah,
it's
well, actually, I think that's really powerful for you to say, because I think many leaders, they think, okay, I have to be bulletproof. I have to be completely perfect and show up like where everybody sees me doing, XYZ all day long. And the reality is, I think when we show our vulnerability like that and say, no, I'm a human, it tells our employees that you're allowed to be humans too, and you're allowed to go fail and forward and make mistakes. And it creates a tremendous amount of psychological safety in the environment where they work, which makes them feel like, okay, I'm not going to, I can try my best. I can try to push the limits a little bit or think outside the box a little bit, because it's okay for me to not have every T crossed and every I dotted perfectly. So for you, you laugh like, oh, I'm manic today. Those little, but that playfulness around like, hey, I'm human and I'm dealing with this, is a really powerful message to your team, that creates a space for them to thrive.
Yeah, and to feel comfortable and to just exhale a little bit. I'll tell them, because they'll call me on a weekend or whatever, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm so sorry to bother you. I was like, you need to stop apologizing. And then I follow that with, if you aren't texting me and calling me, I'll wonder what's going on. So how do you just, it's transparency, it's communication. I mean, that's what I want to do, is be there for them and create their confidence so that, they know I'm here, but now they're like, I don't really need her this time. I don't really need her this time. So it gets better and better. But I agree with you. I think there's many different cultures where teams aren't empowered. The leader or the business owner tries to take patients from the other injectors. I mean, I don't understand any of that. It doesn't make sense to me. Why would you do that? That's a whole other podcast.
Well, that goes back. That's a mindset. That goes back to entrepreneurship being the biggest mirror, and the primary journey of like how you evolve as a human. This is, your business becomes the vessel for you to just like evolve truly. And I think that's where those limitations for you, like if you can't trust people, if you can't let go of your ego that, oh, they want me and only me, and look at what I built and this is mine, you're not going to build a company. You're going to be probably not very highly paid employee of your company. Exactly. I mean, and maybe you have helpers or something, but you're not going to be able to really grow and make impact because you self-limit and self-sabotage, at that point.
Yeah. We have a couple minutes left. So I want you to talk about your conference. I want you to tell everybody, and I want to hear about it again.
Yeah, sure. So the Alt Experience, we're going to be going into our third year. I built, ALT stands for, it's backwards for Thought Leadership Advisory. And my thought was, it was really taking this whole idea of KOLs and flipping that on its head. Like, how do we create something alternative? So it's an incubator for alternative thinkers, people that want to think provocatively, that want to have those conversations that no one's having. And it's really built around discussion leaders who lead conversation about how they epically failed and overcame that failure. And so every speaker, panelist on stage, I personally have worked with, know that they're legit and have a real story and have something really impactful to share based on not what they heard or what they think they should say, but based on what they've actually gone through and done. And they talk about the things like that. Jessica Christie, you've had on your podcast, right, is an example of one. The first year she talked about having two employees that sort of huddled up and decided they were going to start a business down the street, and they left. They took all of her IP, they took all of the things that they had, all the training, all of the patient, everything, and just started a business. And so she's like, yeah, here's how it was going through that, and then here's how I rebuilt, and I think those are such powerful stories rather than here's the best, blah 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 blah. There's no sponsorship. It is not really. It's for us to be able to speak completely unhinged, I guess you could say, and very openly about what it's like growing a business as a female leader. And it's pretty transformative. So I'm really proud of it. And it's small, 50 people in a room.
That's perfect size, though.
It really is. And it's not something I intend to, grow beyond that. Like that I think there's enough in this industry that has a good intention and then greed, slips in the door.
Yeah.
So there's probably other formats for that, and other ways to build bigger conferences and make, the money machine. This is just really a place to connect with and hear, look, you're not alone, what you're dealing with. And I think many women feel frustrated about the performative nature of our industry and how many, how you have to look perfect and be perfect. And, they're putting out on social media what they think other people should say or should do. And I think that drives a wedge. I think that actually creates insecurities for other women who are like, well, I don't have an $8 million business. Like, I'm just, my books aren't full. And it's like, no, it's okay. Like, you're right where you're supposed to be. You don't have to be like, that's not the next thing. Like, and that's the biggest thing I think, like, is what's your definition of success? Because I have women tell me all the time, like, okay, I need you to help me build like my next empire here. And it's like, okay, well, what is success for you? And it's like being on my boat every Wednesday and picking my kids up from school. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. So why are we not focused on building that? And I think sometimes they just need permission
Yeah.
to do it their own way. And so that's what the Alta experience is all about.
So good. Okay, so when is it and where is it? It's in the
Yeah.
spring, right?
Yeah, so it's April 16th to 18th in Newport Beach, California at
Awesome.
the Lido House. Yeah,
So
yeah,
beautiful there. So beautiful.
yeah, it is.
So where can people find you for
Yeah,
anything?
so we talked about the Fierce Factor podcast. That would be the best place to go. And I'm on Instagram at Kaeli, Kaeli. And kind of hang out on social there. And then you'll kind of follow our path from there in terms of, your interests. And, if you're somebody who is interested in coaching or joining a community of women, we have all the resources there. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been so great. Thank you so much for being
Yeah,
on this with me. I loved it.
my pleasure. Thanks, Dr. G.
Yeah, so good. And for all of you guys watching, like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you again next time.